Hey, welcome back to another Manga Talks episode. This is the Halloween special episode for 2025. So today I have 5 books that I've read in this month or maybe last month as well that are horror related or just very strange. We've got one by Kanda Mori here. We've got Genesis, 2 smudge titles, and also this one called Yellow Nightmare, which is very interesting. So all of these reads I liked a lot, and it was of course a fitting month to read all of this. The Halloween month got me back into reading a lot of this horror stuff. So today's videos I will be showing off all 5 of these. Some of them will be, I guess, heavily censored, especially the Kandamori one, probably the Yellow Nightmare, and some others, but we'll see how it goes. So the first book that I read in my horror reading journey this month was Genesis. So Genesis is a really interesting one. I think it's very unique, and for me, I've had Genesis on my shelves for maybe a year, 2 years now. So it's been quite a while where I've kind of left it sitting. I didn't read it last Halloween. So Genesis is by Sumeriko Hoshizono. They were an artist that contributed to Axe as well. So just to give a flick through of what the art looks like, it's so good, and the stories themselves are really good too. I have shown off some Hoshizono previously, I guess, in scattered throughout some manga episodes here and there, but to give some information for Hoshizono, they won the 5th Axe Newcomer Award, the Hayashi Seiji one, and they debuted in 2003 and have also published stuff in the Horror M magazine. So they started off with independent filmmaking, then went to do some manga, and they also participated in Comiket as well. And so I will link their website in the description, or their blog. They do cite some favorites or influences of theirs, so that includes Hanawa Kazuichi, Tokunan Seiichiro, that's the person who did the Human Clock story, Jim Woodrig, Art Spiegelman, among others. And so the main thing that really appealed for me is obviously the art. It has a very different style to the usual style of artwork in manga. It feels very like graphic novel, I guess, Western too. And this work is a compilation of short stories or doujin works that were published between 2000 and 2004. And so the actual book came out in 2006. And what I will say as well, the reason why I'm bringing these books out is because the style of Hoshizono kind of does remind me a bit of the Nishioka Kyodai art style, in that they're both very heavy on the ink and the line work. Well, Nishioka Kyodai is a lot more thin in terms of the line work, but definitely the ink, how dark a lot of it is. And also this here by Yoshitaro Isaka, specifically the hair, the way they draw hair, very similar to Hoshizono over here. So those were 2 artists that I thought of when reading Hoshizono, and the whole vibe of this is like a very gothic vibe. It's a horror book, so a lot of the stories do deal with a lot of gruesome stuff, killings, mortality, everything like that. And so we'll start going through them. There's a lot of different types of stories in here, but I will go through a couple of them. Let me just bring that up. But yeah, the line work in this is so good. It's very thick, so it makes the artwork very hard hitting, and almost all the characters in the book are these high school students. So the first one, just to give an example of what we start off with, this is a story called Picnic at Mount Fuji, and pretty much it's just all these girls, it's a very short one, all these girls go to Mount Fuji, they play a bit, and they die somehow to all these vines, and they turn into angels. that's the story. So that's the very first story that we start off with. And we will get a couple of others that are similar to this, but it's also apparently like a homage. I was searching it up, a homage to the film Picnic at Hanging Rock, but this one's called Picnic at Mount Fuji. So this story is a confusing one. I didn't really fully understand. It's something called Teorema Hall. And we have a transfer student who is in love. So we have Yuriko and Yoshiko. They're in love, I guess. But what happens is they're also near like a circus that is kind of like, I guess, filled with murderers. And she gets saved, or she gets a vision telling her not to go into the circus. And the person who tells her that is an angel that looks exactly the same as Yoshiko. But what happens later is that eventually we have some conflicts with some other girls in the school who are bullies. And essentially what they do is they kidnap Yoshiko and they get tortured in that building. I can't really show any of that off because it's very gruesome. But here are some aftermath scenes of that. Like this. And I guess I can show this one off. Yeah, lots of torture, lots of hanging actually as well. So if you are into the very grotesque, gruesome horror with a different spin to it, a style that is quite unique in the world of manga and alt manga, then Genesis should be the book for you. But yeah, it's a wild story, but it's so unique. I enjoyed it a lot, at least for me, as someone who delves mainly into manga. This sort of art style feels very fresh, even though this came out in 2006. So Genesis is actually the only book that Hoshizono has done. I think they might have done more just like doujin stuff outside that maybe might have not been collected, but they currently aren't active as a mangaka at the moment. So yeah, this is the only one that we have, unfortunately. I actually do have one of their doujin. It's the same story in here, but like as a separate one, how it was originally sold. But otherwise, nothing else really. Unfortunate, but you know, we take what we can get. So this next story is called Tower. And Tower follows a group of girls that gets, I guess, trapped. Yeah, they get trapped by this guy here. And every day, one of them gets hanged because they're all tied to a rope. So you see a lot of that happening. No one knows why this is all happening. And every one of them is just, you know, fearing for their life. But it is revealed, I guess I can show this off a bit. It is revealed that, sorry, let me find the actual thing here. Okay. So the guy with the eye patch, who's supposedly the main villain of all this, is that also the main character here is also named Yoshiko. What had happened was that the girl had killed her brother and herself, but so to make it look like a double suicide, but it was actually her killing her brother. So it seems to be all of this is just her being like tortured or haunted by her actions. And so she has to experience this. I don't know if it's again and again, but it's because of her killing her brother. And her brother is the guy that is hanging up there. Yeah, haunted by visions of guilt. We've got one called Butterfly Coloring Book, where this girl just follows a butterfly. It's more simple. And then the next one that I want to show, I'll just flick through. This one's called Dollhouse. Gruesome. Okay. Yeah, Rinko. So this is Phosphorescence. I did show this off maybe a year ago as its original doujin form, but this is what it looks like in the actual tankobon, with a couple of additions actually. There's like a couple of different pages. Not all of them are different, but a couple of new pages that were added into the story. So we start off the story with two girls kind of just floating in the blackness, and suddenly one of them gets really scared. And here we go. Oh, just the facial expressions are so expressive. And it's revealed that this light is, I guess, the surface of the water, and we have a hint as to why they were in the water in the first place. So it's cool to see that there. And then we have another one called, well, actually the last story is called Genesis. So it's the titular story. It's quite a long one. It's based on the Bible story. But to go through it, the first part we start off with is a girl in her bathtub fighting it, filled all up with blood. She gets like a vision of her being sucked into the hole. And she does. And here she is. Stuck there. Set to be decapitated, which she eventually is. And in a weird turn of events, her head just flies off and she just starts flying to the skies. She also meets some angels and she thinks she's going to heaven, but her head actually just falls back down to earth. And so in part 2, we follow her head just sitting in the forest. A bunch of animals actually pop up also with her head, and they carry her on a journey. Here it is, Tower of Babel. They go to an area called Sodom and Gomorrah, which is actually a like nightclub in this section. Yep. A lot more gruesome stuff is happening to the animals and herself, and what happens is that they press an emergency button which causes a great flood to happen, and everyone flees onto an ark. But all these animals are her, but just with her face on it. And there's like fighting, like just shit fights with the ark itself. And then we end the story here with a birth of a new world. And that was Genesis by Hoshizono Sumeriko. And this afterword is by someone by the name of Yoshihiro Yonezawa. Oh yes, they're the co-founder and president of Komiket. And in this afterword, they describe Hoshizono's work as retro, western, grotesque as well. Focuses on the kingdom of the unreal, the girl's kingdom, which is very apparent and evident through the flick through here. But man, I really, really enjoyed this work. I think anything that feels refreshing and unique in my manga journey obviously is very important to me, because there's so much manga out there, and to find something that kind of stands on its own, at least in the manga world, is so, I'm so happy to have like finally read this. The reason why I finally read it now was number 1 because of Halloween, but number 2 because I'm doing a reading thing where I'm just reading every book from my shelves in order. So that means that the older books that I've had stored away now finally get to see the light of day and be read by me. So this one, I knew though, like before even reading it, and when I bought it, I knew I would like it. Just from looking at the artwork and just from my first impressions of phosphorescence in the story that I showed up before here. Yeah, just from this, I knew I was going to love it, and I did. So 10 out of 10 for me. Highly recommend you to find this. It's not expensive at all. It's just the price of a normal tankobon. Just might not appear as often because this was released in 2006. This was put out by Seiren Kogeisha. There is also an axe issue with a cover done by Hoshizono, but I haven't found that yet. You know, I'm not really buying axe issues at the moment, but in the future, once I start reading through a lot more of my axe, I will go ahead and find that. But yeah, Genesis, highly recommend. I think this is probably my favorite out of the 5 books that I have here today for the Halloween episode. So, and I feel like a lot of people will love this as well. It's very unique, very refreshing, as I've said before. All right, now we'll move on to this book here. So, a recent pickup, so it hasn't been sitting on my shelf too long. This is the Massacre School, or Minagoroshi Gakuen by Kanda Mori. So I'd had a horror haul that I did a couple months ago, including some Kanda Mori works and also some Tanima Yumeji. And finally, I have gotten around to reading my first Kanda Mori book. So this is Massacre School, but it's not... there's like a lot of different stories in here. It's not all centered on the same story. The cover features a lot of different characters from all those one-shots. But I guess this one will be a bit tough for me to show in terms of its content. It is way more, I think, probably the most gruesome out of all 5 books today. So I will do my best, but I will try to, talk about each story as much as I can for anyone who can't find Kanda Mori, because it can be tough to actually locate some of his books. So 37564 School, Massacre School. This was put out in 1994. So here is a little word from Kanda Mori. Horror M Comics, right by them. Okay, so let me just maybe I'll just put these in the background. Alright, so I guess I can show I guess we'll see how much I can push the content I can show through on the channel through this book. So the first story is the titular one, Massacre School, and we start off the story with a guy who, they don't believe the rumors of this statue of Christ crying tears at night. So they're at a school, but of course it does turn out to be true when the statue comes alive and starts dismembering him and killing him. And then we cut to a scene back in school. Keep an eye on this guy, Deme. That's the name of him. Deme is a student that was quite bullied growing up, specifically because of their eyes, very goldfish-like, and they have an obsession, which we'll find out later. But Deme is a character that will pop up again and again throughout the story. We do follow some other high school students, but with each one, they encounter the statue of Christ. And each time the statue, tortures and kills all of them. So we have here a mouthful of dynamite, turn her into a titan, pretty much, and the torture proceeds. And so we come back to another student. This time Deme is also admiring them too. skip, can't show much of that. But in this second or third encounter with these statues, there are actually 2 moving statues for some reason. So at this point, you'll figure out that, they're not statues. They're probably just humans dressed up in the statue, just crazed killers trying to take advantage of this urban legend. And so, boom, there we go. One of them is Deme. And the other is Deme's friend, who's trying to stop Deme, because they realize that Deme had a weird obsession with these people before they died, especially because of their appearance. And so what had happened is that, they explain it somewhere here, they got very obsessed with the Necronomicon and thought eating the skin of beautiful people would make them look better. And, here he is, just cooking up somebody with his demented features. But turns out it kind of works, because they do look a lot more, the eyes are less pronounced, their skin is better. So it turns out that it did work out in the end. I don't know how they didn't get caught. Oh no, I know how they didn't get caught, because they killed everyone. Okay, that's why. But yeah, that's the first story, Massacre School, featuring Deme, the Necronomicon obsessed killer. in high school. And then we move on to another story also called, this time it's called Massacre High School instead of Massacre School. So I guess set in the same high school, but completely different story, completely different characters as well. We follow a soccer team this time. And to start off the story, we have instead of a soccer ball, a man's head is kicked onto the field. And that pretty much starts the story where we have a female student. They join the soccer team, but of course, a soccer team full of men, they are all disgusting men. But during the night, we see her actually dress up as this serial killer with a soccer ball mask, and she kills all of the men that have wronged her. And there you can see her at the front. I was very curious about this character before I read this because, you know, what could this soccer ball head do in the story? And so there are tons of torture scenes in this. Just to describe some, one of them is, you know what, maybe I can show this. Screw it, I'll show it. This guy just gets strung up, his skin flayed, his entire body just like strung up onto the goalpost, and the girl is just kicking soccer balls at him to the point where he just breaks in half. So it is absolutely insane. The reason why actually she's out to kill is because her mum is forcing her to do this. So her mum had to go through like the same abuse when she was in high school. She was the only female student there in a team full of male soccer students, and she was badly abused. So she got her daughter to get revenge by joining the soccer team, being this person who could just murder everyone. But in the end, her daughter betrayed her because she fell in love with one of the students, and the mom just cuts off the limbs of every single soccer player in the team. And what is more insane is that it doesn't end there, because they don't give up and they continue to play the game that they had scheduled without their legs, and they managed to score with just headers. So insane, because I thought it would just end there, but you know, I think they're dying. Well, they gotta be dying, right? Well, they look okay, but that's the daughter and the guy she fell in love with at the very end of the story. So a very strange ending to the story, but these two stories start off the book and give you a sense of what to expect for the rest of it. So Kanda Mori, I am very curious how they will maintain, like, because I do have some other books by them, what they are like as well, because this book is probably one of the most insane books I've read this year, so 2025. I think I love how weird the character designs are. So they're obviously not refined, and it works really well. Like the detail that they have for, especially the gory scenes too. It's just like, maybe on first impressions, the art you might not like, but as you read it more and more, you kind of fall in love with it and how kind of janky it could be sometimes. And you know, it does fit the vibe well of like a B horror story. So there's 4 other stories in this book. This one here is called You Are Rotten, and it follows this guy whose name is Yutaka. He goes to this occult person's house, so this lady here, to take notes on the occult, because she can, like, I think she's a seance or something like that, but he comes with his girlfriend. That's his girlfriend, Yukari. And so the seance actually falls in love with Yutaka, and there's a sort of jealousy that comes out of all this. So she devises a plan to actually poison. Okay, so she poisons herself because she wants to take over the body of Yukari as a soul or a spirit, and she does. And there's this whole thing of just how eventually Yukari finds out. There's like the dead body of the original seance also comes back to life with the soul swapped, and well, they eventually have to kill both of them off. And yeah, the next story we have is Scary Maggot Girl. where what happens in this one? I'm trying to remember here. Oh yes, there's a doctor who basically just does experiments turns people into insect creatures. Yeah, kind of wild. What happens in this one? Okay, yeah, like a weird. This is one of the creatures, insect creatures, that was born, and it's kind of funny actually, just seeing this weird person just chasing this girl around. Man, I can't show any of this off. This is insane. But the end of the story is that the girl manages to kill the doctor, but the insect creature is, I guess, kind of has Stockholm syndrome, and so it chooses to die with the doctor at the end. Yeah, I guess. Okay, 2 more stories. So, Stepmother's Bottled Hell is the next one. From the cover, definitely can't show anything. A very SM heavy. We have a stepmother. So Shinko is the name of this kid here. He gets a new stepmom, but the stepmom is quite evil, kills off the dad immediately, chains up Shinko like this, like a dog. So rules over the household, controls everything, and at night, she actually is a very heavy SM serial killer. So here's the mum. She dresses up in her outfit and pretty much just straps people to like a board and starts torturing them and eventually killing them. And how she does that is with whips. So you can imagine what she does. Insane. Can do none of this. I can show none of this, but I will say the end of the story, the cycle continues because the Shinko eventually corners his stepmom, traps her in the bottle that he was trapped in, and then kind of develops a love for the same thing his stepmom was doing. So the cycle really does continue in that story. And now we come to the final story of The Terror of Skull Butterfly 666. Okay, but okay, here we start off with, that's of the previous story. But in this story, we get a scientist who, over here, he's the scientist. They've been doing experiments with a specific butterfly and his wife. And what had happened as a result of that was that his wife had given birth to like a human butterfly hybrid that would emit, here she is, emit a perfume that would reveal everybody's true feelings for each other. And she goes around killing, well, she doesn't actually go around killing people, but the true feelings, they kind of like unlock everybody's like violent desires. And so what we have is that eventually the scientist himself is killed, and then the butterfly creature is decapitated. But the guy who decapitates her continues to receive all these visions of her, which in fact they turn out to be not visions at all, because she's just like regenerated, I guess, because she's a butterfly. I don't know if I don't think they have that much regen, but it turns out that the girlfriend of that guy, they kind of fall in love with the butterfly hybrid. And yeah, that is the Massacre School story. I think that was a little bit jank of me to like explain all that, because a lot of it was just, you know, me trying to find a page to really show off fully. I'll have to review how much I can show out of everything once I do the editing. But Kanda Mori is absolutely insane. I knew that, you know, judging from just a flick through of everything, that his works are what they are. But it was actually kind of an enjoyable read as well. It's very different actually to a lot of the horror that I read. Very different to, at least, you know, the other 4 books that I've had. But Kanda Mori, another one where if you can find a book of his, please pick it up. Very unique, very different, but also on the harder side to locate as well. So in the future, right now I think I've got 2 or 3 more Kanda Mori works. I will be reading those semi-frequently, just because I do want to get through some Tanima Yumeji stuff too. So because that haul was mostly Tanima Yumeji, so I do want to get through all that first. But yeah, Massacre School, second book that we have. Okay, so from the splatter horror of Kanda Mori, let's move on to some English releases here. We've got 2 of them by Smudge, the horror imprint of Living the Line and Ryan Holmberg. So I think this is the 3rd or 4th book. I don't remember, but yeah, we've got Face Meat by Bonten Taro and My Gorilla Family and Other Stories of Human Horror by Ijima Ichiro. So I'm going to go through Gorilla Family first, because this one I read first, and then I read Face Meat. So Gorilla Family, wow, this is I feel like a very, what's it called, under the radar milestone that we have for English releases, because Ijima Ichiro, I have seen like a year or 2 ago, like the original Guppy reprints that they had. I've had known about for quite a while, but I never picked them up because I guess they weren't on my priority list. But to see it finally released in English, and also I think I've heard from Holmberg, like he was talking about no, in the afterword for this, they talk about this because there's more stories outside of this that are planning to be adapted into another volume of works as well. So even better. And this book is absolutely insane. I went into it without any expectations, and the cover kind of matches the energy of the book, I think, to a T. So My Gorilla Family is the most recent release of the Smudge imprint. So the next one, I believe, will be another Kawashima Norikazu book. But this is fitting if you love strange, very, very strange short stories. Not in the sense of like, you know, the normal splatter horror that you might get from horror works, but just weird concepts, I feel like. So to give an example, let me go through, because I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but I'll give it a brief look at the artwork. The artwork is amazing. There it is. So of course, recommended for mature readers. Yeah, so number 1, the artwork is great. But to talk about just like some premises of these stories, like for example, the first story that we have is called Spider Horror, and the premise of that is that we essentially see a woman that has been infected with like some spider curse of sorts, and we see spiders coming out of different places in their body. So that's the very first story that comes about. We have other stories like, of course, My Gorilla Family. That one is actually more of a tame story compared to other stories in this book. So the premise of this one is that a woman wakes up, I guess was it from amnesia or just maybe hitting her head? Yeah, she hit her head, and she discovers that the society coexists with these gorilla people, and she has to get accustomed to it. That's how I'll leave it with that. But that one, yeah, compared to the other stories, it's quite tame. So at least for the 2 Smudge books, I'm not going to actually go through the entire book, obviously, but I want to at least just use this section to talk about why these books are great and why you should pick them up. So My Gorilla Family, I think you would enjoy if you want to find horror or just strange works with, number 1, some great art that's more leaning towards like the gekiga style. Like some of the characters, they just look like they're just straight up from Gogo 13 from Takao Saito. So it's kind of that visual style with the horror stories that and the horror premises that you'll see in a lot of B horror. So these short stories with just one twist at the end. But seeing that combination is great. And yeah, I guess I'm just refraining a lot because I think it's more fun to go into this blind, which is what I did. And so yeah, I guess it's not really much of a review, but please do pick this up. Crazy. Same thing with Face Meat actually. So Face Meat I read after My Gorilla Family. This is by Bonten Taro. So Bonten Taro has actually had their works published in English before. So Badass Babes was one of them. There was I think a couple more. Oh, sorry. I'll briefly mention as well, for Ijima Ichiro, the afterword of this book here, they were done by one of the co-founders of, here's the original, that was what I was talking about, the co-founders of Guppy Shorin, who put out collections of his works in 2003 and 2007. It's a great afterword. It talks about Ijima and his connections to obscure erotic magazines, manga magazines. But yeah, coming back to Bonten Taro, wow, Bonten Taro is like his history, I guess. The afterword that talks about his life is insane. He's done so much. He's a very controversial figure because he was kind of like a gangster, he was a tattooist, mangaka, musician, he's done everything. Also was like a soldier in World War II. So very interesting if you want to read about someone you feel like has done everything. But Face Meat is another collection of one-shots. And this is kind of special because with Bonten Taro, and they talk about this in the afterword, a lot of the manga that he created were done in manga magazines, but this was before kind of the 70s where the practice of compiling different stories into a tankobon, that practice wasn't like a thing as much with when Bonten Taro was making manga. So a lot of Bonten Taro's work in the past had not been collected. So now like the Bonten Taro like societies doing reprints. We have one here done by Ryan Holmberg. So just to give you an example of the artwork that we have for Bonten Taro, you have here, quite good as well. It's also a really cool thing too is we get color pages scattered throughout. So I'll show you the Face Meat one because I really love this one. Face Meat. So we have these like duotone color pages of like the title and also some of the initial pages, which is really cool. Not all of them have it, but they are scattered throughout. So that's another nice bonus for you if you love that sort of thing. Here's another one here. And these are the stories that pop up through it. But I also really enjoyed Face Meat too. So again, going into it without any expectations, this is personally my first read of Bonten Taro. So I've never had Badass Babes. I've never had any other Japanese release from Bonten Taro. So going to this blind, knowing a little bit about his history of being a tattooist and being like drawing that sort of gekiga, like violent, erotic stuff. That was all I knew. Going to it blind, pretty good experience. I would definitely recommend this as well. It's something that you won't find in the general horror landscape as of right now, I would say. But to give some examples of some different stories here, let's see. I think I'll just, this one here is cool. So maybe I'll shield this too. Great color page too. I know this was actually released by Mandarake as a reprint. Not this, like it has the cover that I just showed, but it includes other stories, I believe. So that one was called The Further Adventures of Dr. Frankenstein. The premise of that is that a doctor, who is, Dr. Frankenstein, they are helping a man or a hunchback by the name of Gon look for a new body. And of course, the ways that they get that body is obviously illegal and, serial killer, along with the vibes of serial killer. And things go wrong from there. other stories that we'll get is the example of here, face meat. So face meat, if you think about it, I think the first thing that I thought of when I heard the name face meat was that, all right, we're gonna have some very heavy cannibal type stuff, which I guess I was kind of wrong, kind of. Yeah, I was wrong. But the premise of this is that we start off with a killer, or people find all these remnants of fresh corpses who've had their heads cut off. And, well, you wonder why. Why would this guy specifically target fresh corpses with these decapitations? Does he have a purpose for them? And it goes on from there. So, great set of stories as well. You can tell they're, from the era that they were written from. But I think out of the two, if I had to choose a favorite, I might actually go for My Gorilla Family, because I think in comparison, the premises and the concepts are way more strange. I think Face Meat, because Bonten Taro as well did a lot of Jidaigeki stuff. If you go to the back of the blurb, or where was it? Somewhere. Yeah, Bonten Taro here. Just a little like biography of him. He is an originator of Catfight Gekiga, featuring Yakuza and teen femme fatales engaged in Russ Meyer style pinky violence. So yeah, pinky violence I guess is the word that best describes it. But Bonten Taro also has some stories in here that also focus on the supernatural too. So if you are into the, like ghosts, spirits and that, you still will have that good variety in Face Meat. So yeah, pinky violence plus a good mix of like supernatural spirit stuff. My Gorilla Family actually has some somewhat sci-fi premises, but they are just, I think, way more strange. It's hard to... Definitely they deal with supernatural stuff too, but it's hard to really pinpoint a specific thing that connects everything, other than them being like, all of them are really weird. Some of them, like for the two of them, there's a lot of like confronting stuff too. But otherwise, just the premises of some of these stories are insane. So I apologize, I'm not going to really go through all the stories in this, because I do want you to support Smudge, Living the Line, Ryan Holberg, and support all of these cool releases that we're getting in English of, all this horror stuff that the only way to get them was to either get the reprint or just the original. But even the reprints would be hard to get, because Ijima, Ichiro, their reprints were back in like 2003, 2007 by Guppy, and that's just sometimes just sold out all the time. So now that we have an avenue where we can get all this cool vintage retro horror, please support Living the Line and Ryan Holberg in what they're doing for us. So yeah, and I love the spines too. I love the variation color that we get. And so right now, I am, with these two books, fully up to date with Smudge. I've read Face Meat, Gorilla Family, UFO Mushroom Invasion, Her Frankenstein, and Man Sex now. So if I were to actually rank all of them, before I go on to the next book, I think it'd be very hard. I still think my favorite... Oh, actually, no, they're really hard to rank. Okay, I'm not going to rank them, because they're actually all really good. I enjoyed all of them. There was nothing much that I had like gripes with, but I actually enjoyed all of them. So I'm not going to rank it. I just realized, like, in my mind, I thought I would have a favorite, but it changes. It really changes all the time. So the last book that we'll have today for this Halloween Reads episode is going to be Yellow Nightmare, published in 2018 by Lead, done by Kijima Tenshin. So this book was another book that was actually stacked on top of Genesis on my shelf. I've had this for a year or two, but never touched it. The reason why I picked this up was because I was going through like Lead stuff quite a while ago, just looking at different publishers that did manga outside the mainstream. And this one caught my attention just in terms of the art. I knew nothing about it until I started reading it. So Kijima Tenshin, I don't really know too much about. I just know, well, this was made in 2018, so they are still doing manga now. So they're more of a more recent mangaka, but this is another collection of one-shots, and these are absolutely insane. Just going into this without any expectations yet again, or I think I did that for everything, yeah. Every book today, but this one kind of just blew me away because this is a manga that is more recent than the others. You know, everything else was done like early 2000s, 90s, even backdated even more, but this one's the most recent one. And I think, you know, with horror coming out now, it's not my thing. I do tend to gravitate more towards retro vintage horror, but this one just was actually really good and very shocking. So to showcase an example of the artwork, some of the stories here are insane. Okay, so let's go through this. The first story we have is called Death Dream, was it? Yeah, Death Dream. So we start off with a woman who's actually trapped in like a seal, so that she's being vacuum sealed by this guy who's very, you know, he's a sicko. He's into compression because like it arouses him, but she eventually dies in there because, well, that's his fetish, you know, killing people in this compressed state. But we go to him where he wakes up, finds that the girl's dead, alright, goes up with his girlfriend to dump the body and ends off there. But then we realize that, okay, he wakes up, sees the body again, kind of deja vu. And it is deja vu because what's happening is that he's stuck in a time loop where every day he has to go out and dump the body. Every single day. Till we realize that, oh, it's actually him that has been compressed. So he has finally got his, his karma, and that whole sequence of that time loop was him just in his final moments, I guess, just suffering. His mental is just torturing himself with these repeats of the previous murder that he did. So that one was quite a short one. That's the first story to start things off. Death Dream. That was actually one of my favorites throughout all of this. But we have 3 more stories. So each of these stories are quite long. So I'll just explain the general plot of these. Spoilers. Well, I mean, this whole video kind of has been spoilers anyways. But this book has not been published in English. I don't think it doesn't feel like a candidate for an English release, not going to lie, because, I mean, I'm not sure how popular Kijima Tenshin is, but I think generally with what happens in these stories, bit tough. I mean, like, if people can't publish Kazuo Umezu's God's Left Hand, Devil's Right Hand, then, you know, stuff like this probably wouldn't get published either. So English market wise, probably not. So yeah, so glad I can showcase this at least in one avenue. But this is something called Human Face Funeral. It's another story where we actually start off with a very brutal, not decapitation, but like defacing, like his face is just chopped off for lying. And it starts off this, it's like an urban legend that starts off the story. And what I found really disgusting is a lot of parts of this book here has a lot of really disgusting moments. One of them is that his face is cut off, and in replacement of his face, a giant scab just forms. So just imagine a face-sized scab on someone's face. Freaks me the hell out. Well, it's not scary, it's just disgusting. I hate that sort of thing. So there's a couple of other things as well that will be disgusting too. But that's just an urban legend where it kicks off the story pretty much where if you lie and you get found out, well, your face will drop off in a certain way. And we have that where we've got this girl here. She starts with, I think, yeah, Aguri, that's her name. She's a popular girl, but every single guy that likes her has a different impression of her. And the reason is because, you know, she acts different with every single guy. So she, in a sense, has multiple faces. And so what Chinako does is she exposes Aguri for that. You know, all these guys are so head over heels for her. She's the only one that can kind of see her for what she is, you know, being fake. And when she finally exposes that, I guess the urban legend comes into play and her face starts bleeding and chips off. Well, actually, no, just fully falls off to reveal a giant scab. And in a very disgusting scene here, she scratches off that scab to reveal a new face. You can see here, that's the scab. You can see like the outlines of the face here. But more and more faces keep falling off. So pretty much all of Aguri's faces are all falling off until eventually, you know, she's cornered here and she's gathering all her faces. Even Chinako actually has her face fallen off too, because she was exposed for being like, she acts mean on the outside but she's nice on the inside, that sort of thing. But Aguri falls and eventually dies. But later on, they discover a gigantic scab with this final face from Aguri. So yeah, insane story. I hated it for how disgusting it was, because it just made me think about scabs the entire time. So these, yeah, ew. But interesting story. Not my favorite out of everything, because I think my favorite would be, I think the last one. I think I'll say the last one is my favorite. Okay, the next one here, I will not be able to show much of this. This is something like Full Moon Beautiful Tears. A traveler, he finds this woman just in the desert, just sitting there and crying. And she, the reason why she's crying is, well, she goes on to tell her whole backstory. And she's got two pets. One is this turtle here, and well, they're both turtles. One is a soft-shelled one, and one is just like a normal one. And she hates the soft-shelled one. She just abuses it a lot for some reason, because like it can't, you know, perform as well as the other turtle. But as things go on, she eventually cooks the turtle, tries to eat it, but in a weird turn of events, she does some naughty things with the turtle, and then she starts giving birth to like their babies. But when they're not normal babies, because these are what the babies are. So what hatch out of the eggs are these like cannibalist, well, I guess they're not cannibals because they're like half human, half turtle things. Well, they hatch out and they start just eating this guy alive. They look kind of like very like evil mermaids. I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, weird. Don't know what the influence or inspiration for this story was. Very unsettling. I don't think I liked it very much, but it is a testament to how insane some of these stories are, and another reason why I was so surprised going into this with absolutely no expectations, and knowing that this was just sitting on my shelf for like 2 years without me knowing anything. So wild, insanely wild. All right, so now we come up to the final, oh no, I was wrong, sorry. Not the final story. There's actually 2 more stories, but this one here is my favorite. As you can see, we have quite a big section of the book to go, but this is my favorite for how crazy it is, but also the one I hate the most because of how disgusting it is. Because, you know, as an Aussie, we get so many mosquitoes. It's so bad. I hate mosquitoes so much. And this entire story will feature mosquitoes. So if you don't like mosquitoes, then you'll also find this this story disgusting, because they flood every single page of this story. So Falling in Blood, this is the name of the next one. So we have this soldier here who's kind of just trapped on an island, and they kind of get into a fight with like their captain. But that's not really the important part because as you can see already, you can see all these mosquitoes just buzzing around this one guy. Just constantly. So, there is interruption of some planes shooting them down. And you can see here mosquitoes going inside that guy's body. So why is that important? Well, this is the aftermath where everyone's kind of dead and it's just him who's run away. And we get a backstory to him and his, the girl that he fell in love with as a kid. So he just wants to, go back home to see her again. But he's just plagued and tortured by all these mosquitoes. So you see here, it's like an abnormal amount of mosquitoes. And to the point where he actually has these phantom mosquitoes in his head where he can feel and hear mosquitoes no matter where he is. So, I was confused as to whether all these were real or not, but they do turn out real later on, which we'll show. So more mosquitoes. He's just trying to get rid of them, but just, you look at him, look at all the bites on him. It's just the most disgusting feeling ever, imagining that. He even tries to eat a spider or let a spider go into him just so he can get rid of the mosquitoes inside him, because they're now inside him at this point. They're everywhere, and he's just tortured like that. He looks so disgusting. It was so tough reading this because just imagining mosquitoes swarming you, oh god, I cannot deal with that. But he also gets this vision of his of Kaya, the woman he loves, disappearing, from into mosquitoes, that sort of thing. It's also, I guess, another metaphor for him being the problem in their relationship. I didn't really understand too much of that, but that ends off the first section of the story where we find him just pretty much dead. You can see the texture of his skin. All of those are mosquito bites. Just the most disgusting thing ever. Okay, and then this is the same story, by the way. We go to part 2. This is called The Bloody Bridal. So based on the same characters, but instead we follow mosquitoes. So now we get the exact same story, but everything is in the perspective of the mosquitoes. And we actually have this love story between one mosquito and this female one, but they end up being eaten by that guy that we saw beforehand. And now it becomes a story of them trying to escape his body, which is insane. I think this is my first time ever reading a story from the perspective of a mosquito. Yeah, no, it is. No, I can't think of any other thing. So they're trying to escape here. One of the male mosquito manages to escape when he coughs him out, but he wants to go back in to try and save his lover mosquito. And so he's helped by a fly, I think. Somewhere. Where is it? Yes, he's helped by this fly, MVP fly. And, well, they're trying to think, how do we get back in? Well, can't go through his mouth again. Let's go up his ass. And they do that. So they go up his ass. And now it's a game of the two mosquitoes trying to find each other. The two lover mosquitoes. And they do find each other here through a wall. They're separated through a wall. And there's these weird visions that happen. There's these parallels between the two lovers, the human ones and the mosquito ones. This final kiss through the membrane of his skin. I don't know what it was, but even more disgusting, she lays all these eggs inside, and that's why he dies and bursts out with all of these mosquitoes coming in with him. Yeah, hands down one of the most disgusting things I've read this year. Can't think of anything else that really comes close to that, I'm not gonna lie. But we also have a map of the timeline of those events. So them meeting here, and then how they went through the body and all that type of stuff. Unique for sure, but so disgusting. Well, I appreciate that. I really appreciate it, having the ability to shock me and make me recoil and gag. So yeah, that was definitely my favorite story. And now we come on to the last one. This is called Wood Shavings. It's more on the normal side, not gonna lie. I think I predicted what was gonna happen at the end, but essentially we have this this construction worker who is helping build or design or manage the new building of this newlywed couple. But he is seduced by the couple who teases him all the time, and he goes kind of crazy out of jealousy. And what has happened is that the couple finds their house to be kind of shaved away, hence the name Wood Shavings. So eventually he comes back to the house, and with the wood shaver tool, bludgeons them, kills them, shaves their face off. A lot of shaving. That's another thing that gave me the ick in this, shaving skin with a razor and whatever it was. Disgusting. So I actually can't show a lot of this, not gonna lie. Oh, there we go. Story ends off with all three of them dead. Two of them fully shaved off. One of them was him, also shaved somehow. So I guess that's the supernatural part of it coming into play. But yeah, that was Yellow Nightmare by Kijima Tenshin. Such a wild story. It's like, this is the second time I'm kind of reading it because I'm explaining it in this video. But even then, just explaining it, I'm still like, wow, something like this came out 7 years ago. It's kind of crazy, but I do respect it because it's something where in the current landscape of horror you would not expect it. I think maybe I'm just like kind of too focused on retro horror because everything now seems like kind of predictable, I guess, but this one was for sure not predictable at all. So that's why I really enjoyed it, despite it having so many things that made me want to gag and recoil. But yeah, so quite a long video. I did not expect to go through these books for this long, but I think it was just me wanting to explain all the stories, except for the smudge ones. So that was pretty much my Halloween reading. I don't know if I'm going to read any more Halloween stories because I've read quite a lot this month. We'll see, but yeah, this is like an hour video. I didn't expect it to go for this long, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I think a good mix of accessible horror works that you can get yourself. So these two smudge ones, please support them. The most recent one, the Kaoshi on Norikazu, has been announced for pre-orders, I think today when I'm recording this video. So a good mix of that. And also, this one's kind of accessible. You can get this on Amazon. Like it's only published in 2018, so pretty easy. And then these two are obviously a little bit harder to get, especially the Kanda Mori. Genesis, Genesis is hard to get to. So keep a lookout for them if you want to have these physically. The prices themselves aren't too bad. So even though they are rarer, they're not on the crazy expensive side. So yeah, just keep a lookout, I guess. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I hope everyone has a happy Halloween. We don't really do that here in Australia, so I guess this is my way of doing Halloween. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.